Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Dr. McBride pretty well laid out the solution here. It would be to simplify and rationalize our tax code. Unfortunately, we've done a pretty miserable job here in Congress of attempting to do that. But Dr. Yegan, Dr. McBride also laid out the facts according to the IRS in terms of what percentage of the total income the top 1% versus the bottom 50% make. So I won't repeat that. It is interesting that JCT looks at it slightly different. The top 1% of the floor of the income level there is $548,000 worth of income. JCT looks at people making over $500,000, and they say that they make about 22.7% of income, pay about 51.8% of total income taxes, 32.6% of total taxation. Okay? So the question I have for both Dr. Yeagan and Dr. Klausing, assuming the top 1% makes about 22% of the income, what percent share of the total income tax should they pay? What would that be a fair share? Because we always hear from the other side, what would be fair? Right now they're paying almost double. Well, according to JCT, they're paying more than double taxation versus income. What would be fair? When are you going to be satisfied?
Thank you, Senator.
And I want a percentage. I don't want to really, what percent? Should it be 51.8%? Should it be 60%, 70%, 80%?
You and your colleagues have earned millions of more votes than I have. I'm an economist, and I can speak to the economics of the policies. One key thing is that state and local taxes are actually regressive. And so when you talk to total tax burdens, they're pretty flat over the income distribution.
Dr. Klausing, what would you give me a figure on that? Again, I can never get this out of people. I mean, what would be a fair share? If you're making 22% income, how much percent of the income tax should you be contributing?
A lot of the statistics that you and others have raised on this issue concern labor tax burdens, and one of the things that both Professor Yeagan and my own testimony point to is that there's a vast discrepancy between how we tax labor income and how we tax capital.
Okay, so the moves into my next. So again, JCT shows 23% of income, but about 33% of total tax. Yeah. So should that be 50% or what?
According to Treasury data, the top 1% of taxpayers have 52% of the positive capital income, and that's the income that's really undertaxed, both at the individual level, as we see in Professor Yeagan's.
Okay, well, I'm not going to get an answer. So let me move on. I think Dr. Yeagan, you were talking about turning what you don't think is pass-through income. It's really salary type of income, and turning it into pass-through and avoiding the Medicare tax. I mean, is that correct? So I mean, an example of that would be, let's say you're being paid royalty on a book, which in that case I would actually, from my standpoint, having been a manufacturer operating pass-through income businesses, when you're making income off of manufacturing, I would think that's like real business income and should be treated as pass-through. But a royalty on a book, I would say that probably should be attributed to people as real, like, salary income. Would you agree?
Yeah, labor income.
So what you're talking about in terms of that tax dodge is exactly what President Biden did when he turned royalty income in through, I think it's subchapter S, into pass-through income and didn't pay the Medicare tax, correct? Now that's what you're talking about in terms of people turning what should be Medicare taxable income into pass-through income, right?
Yes, and same for, a private practice physician or others. They're all legally using the tax code, and it's just
so. Let me ask you this question: Social Security is, we tax that, and there's a limit to it because the deal with Social Security is you're basically pre-funding your own retirement fund. I mean, that's the. I know it's not really what happens, but I mean that's sort of the. Wouldn't you say that's sort of the same thing true with the Medicare? That you're paying all your lifetime, you're paying the Medicare tax to provide your Medicare benefit, but we don't limit the Medicare tax. So I would argue that's somewhat unfair. If you want to, change the deal, that this isn't really a payroll tax for your retirement, Medicare then ends up just being a general fund type of program, correct?
If I understood the question right, so Social Security benefits are a function of how much you pay in. So the more I pay in, the more I get. Medicare is a flat benefit, and so that has different.
Yeah, but again, if you're turning pass-through income where it could be in a business, could be millions of dollars
Sure.
with no limit on that. You're paying an awful lot for health care in your retirement age. Let me just move on, because I think the other solution in terms of what you're talking about, trying to tax capital gains, which I think violates a basic principle of taxation, wherewithal to pay. Senator Kaine, I think, wrote favorably about what I was talking about in 2017, a true Warren Buffett tax, where we convert all business income into pass-through income and tax business income at the shareholder level. And I would do it based on a cash basis income. But wouldn't that also solve the problem? Now you're not going to have this buildup inside C Corps of non-distributed income. So if you just tax all business income at the shareholder level, by the way, I talked to Warren Buffett about this. I talked to his shareholder services. It's entirely possible. You collect the tax on a backup withholding like you do the payroll tax. I mean, would you agree that that would be something we really ought to explore, some system like that?
There are multiple ways to skin the cat here. And, the Sinatra tax burden and the Walton tax burden is different now. What you can't do to equalize those tax burdens is both lower corporate tax rates and keep individual tax rates low. But as you say, if you would tax all corporate income in the year it's earned as ordinary income, that would equalize. To
the shareholders. And again,
yes.
Tax at the shareholder level. That's what we do 95% of American businesses. So I'd love to work with the chairman in terms of working on that type of proposal, because it solves an awful lot of the problems that you're talking about here. So I look forward. We got a couple years to work on this, because unfortunately, 95% of American businesses are facing a severe tax increase in 2026. And that's all the small businesses, the people that are engines of innovation in our economy. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.